Michael, thank you for joining us. How are you?
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome. Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience and what Polycount does?
Okay. So I've been working with virtual reality for 26 years, and I had owned a company for 23 years, and we just changed the name from M2 Studio to Polycount about a month ago. We had been kind of having two names for a while, but Polycount is the current name, and it's a team of about right now we're 18 creators, metaverse experts, analysts. But mostly we're a production team. So we build virtual reality and metaverse environments for about 10 to 15 platforms. I mean, sometimes we don't use certain platforms anymore, but we mostly build these environments on the platform called Spatial. But we also work on Alt Space, and we've built spaces for Decentraland and VR Chat and uh, Sandbox and a bunch of other platforms like Vatom. But my team consists of uh, architects, interior designers, 3D experts, some programmers, some animators, some sculptors and modelers, interior designers, and industrial designers. And we've developed a process over the last 3 years to be pretty efficient at creating these experiences like the environment we're in right now for just a multitude of use cases.
Can you give me a few? I'm quite curious to
Man, it's
hear.
it's really been quite a bit. I would say I break them into two categories and say about half of them are what we'd call internal facing. Those would be for brands, corporations, enterprise, or just small companies that say we want to create an environment for meetings, for training, for onboarding. Maybe we're going to use it for sales presentations or any number of different internal applications. We've seen some companies had some good success with using virtual environments to sell complex concepts, in some cases engineering projects or sales initiatives or defense equipment to their clients or customers, and they usually do it either through shipping off the VR headset or just inviting them into a metaverse space. The other we call external, and there's usually more like a brand engagement. So a couple of examples: we built some spaces for McDonald's. We're building a space right now for a major watch company. We've done some other spaces for some for some cable television shows from film companies, some television corporations, and just generally like brands that want to engage with the public. And so those tend to be more about either just a general marketing or brand awareness, or some companies who are looking for experience and opportunities to get started at the metaverse and how they're going to position themselves in the public with the metaverse.
That sounds really exciting, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
And that drives a lot
I
of
did,
curiosity for a lot of brands because
yeah.
I think at this time of the consumer stage, there's been so much conversations around brands trying to build the experience itself, build awareness around what they can offer more than just just a physical experience. And of course that's where I think when you mentioned platforms like VR chat and and Sandbox and Decentraland, I think it drives a lot of curiosity for what you have done. Michael, I wanted to know from you what's been your personal experience with VR, AR, and the metaverse as of now within this field.
Well, as I've been working with VR since 1996, and watching the development of the
Wow.
technology over the last 26 years. It's the interesting thing is that the hardware side of it has had a very slow and sort of long, gradual development, right? And in fact, when I got involved in '96, VR had been around for 30 years already. So I just got in, at only a halfway point. But it's been interesting to see the advancements over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And for a while there, we were trying to sell virtual reality services to most of our clients at the time, back in, say, 2006 to 2019, were primarily architects, engineers, real estate development companies, public institutions that would build parks or high speed trains or, light rail stations. And we had a little bit of success here and there with some hospitals and some hotels, but we really didn't sell very much VR content. So I started to switch in 2016 to augmented reality and looking for applications in the augmented reality space. First with the HoloLens, the Magic Leap, And then looking more long term at like where this is headed, I initially thought the HoloLens 2 was going to be the product that was going to really change things, and then I kind of switched into a different headset called the Nreal. But along that time, I got involved with a team called Spatial, and Spatial is an existing platform, and I was one of their earliest beta testers. And it was really impressive, even back in early 2020, where we had VR, AR HoloLenses, and you'd have meetings with all these people in your home or your office, and they'd be all scattered around the world. And you'd look out and you'd see the holograms of other avatars in your own office, and it was an incredible technology. The problem is that it was hard to get a HoloLens 2. It was an expensive device, and so a lot of people weren't out there buying it. And around the summer of 2020, Spatial decided to start supporting the Oculus Quest, the first one. And when they did that, then all of a sudden the opportunity to build immersive virtual worlds became more important. And so we started to switch when Spatial came to us in, let's say, September, August of 2020, and they asked us, can you support some of our clients and build virtual environments for them? And that's essentially when, for our company, things really started to take off. I mean, it wasn't immediately just a huge rocket ship, but what we saw was a relatively gradual increase over the last, let's say, 27, 28 months in new corporations and companies looking to create some experience in a metaverse world. Back in 2020, we weren't calling it metaverse. In fact, most part of 2021, we weren't calling it metaverse either. But since Mark Zuckerberg changed his name, changed Facebook to Meta, that certainly was when we saw a huge increase in corporations around the world looking to find some solution or find some pathway into the metaverse. And so now what we've watched now is just an incredible growth. Along the way, I'm a big fan of hardware, so I'm always trying to get the newest devices, the newest headsets, just so I can know what's available, what's going to be coming, and kind of try to make a predictions from our company's perspective about where this is going and where the
Well,
technology will be in 24 months and
Michael, what do you
36
think
months.
of the
Yeah.
new headset that Meta released recently?
I love it. In fact, I'm at home right now, but normally I would only be using the new headset, the Oculus Quest Pro. I actually think it's a fantastic device, and if I was a business right now, um, depending on what my financials were, I'd be replacing it with the Oculus Quest Pro. Now,
Wow.
the Oculus Quest 3 that comes out next spring, it might be perform just as well, and if I'm more budget conscious, I might wait for that. But I mean, I'm not going to be using the Oculus Quest 2 anymore. I just happen to have this at home, and I'll use it at home. But for my office use, for sure, the Oculus Quest 2. And I was debating on whether to buy 20 of them and give them to all my team members. I'm going to wait and see what the performance of the Oculus Quest 3 is versus the Meta Quest Pro, and we'll just see if the Quest 3 performs as well. I may just buy 20 of those instead.
What's the unique selling point that you've noticed in
Okay.
comparison to the Quest 2?
Well, so again, as someone who's been working in this space for a quarter of a century, one of the big moves that happened when the Quest 1 was replaced by the Quest 2 was the performance improvement was considerable, right? Like the Quest 1 was developed, I think it was like in 2015, 2016. Even though it came out in 2019, it was really in 2020, the Quest 2 had a much faster processor on it. So the performance was much, much better. Well, I'm seeing the exact same thing with this one. The XR2 Plus processor, the processor the Qualcomm developed, man, it really, really is considerably higher performance. So, as a person who likes to take benchmark tests and see, where does it actually stack up, when I'm looking at polygon count, I can tell that the polygon count that device will handle is somewhere between 4 to 8 times more than the Quest 2. Now the visual, like the way it looks in terms of what you see, it's not that dramatically different, but the performance that it can handle is significantly higher. So that's number one. I like the charging station. I think the hand controllers are much more comfortable. I mean, it is slightly better visually, not much. You won't notice a huge difference there. But I think that the overall package is really, really high end, and it's much, much better and feels much more premium than the Oculus Quest 2. But more than anything at all, the performance that this device will handle is going to really be a game changer. So for those people who have it, I can't see them saying no, it's not much better. Once we start to really see the performance that you can do, and that's going to impact things like games, but it's also going to mean worlds like that we're in right now, experiences that we're like this can be significantly more rich and more well defined.
Agreed. Agreed. Adi, any sharing
I
points?
mean, yes, it's like honestly, the moment it was announced at Connect 2022, that even with the fact that it about Meta integrating with Microsoft to introduce Teams within the whole phase, and of course the features that were introduced. I saw some videos of the MetaQuest Pro 2. I think it's uh, I think the hardware that they're trying to introduce now is like a it's a step forward for a lot of people to understand what could be the ultimate potential of the metaverse. Because as of now, if you saw some videos from February 2022, where some people who are critics within the metaverse space, they're like, you know, the metaverse is dead, and somebody's saying, okay, Microsoft just killed Meta's, metaverse, and there's so much curiosity. Like a lot of people are saying that Meta's gonna rule, it's gonna be the monopoly that runs the whole face. I think it's not yet explored as of now as for how people see it, because the concept of making integrations and interoperability within the metaverse is the real key that makes collaborations and stronger relationships better for user experience, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what I genuinely feel like. For example, how these tie-ups are coming in, it's more like people are more approachable to each other, brands are becoming more approachable to each other for a possible collaboration, and we're seeing
Agreed.
competition turning into something else. That's what it's like a big move in terms of marketing as well, because I think brands will now gain more curiosity as to what they could achieve with so many varied elements that could be provided within much one platform itself. Michael, what do you think? I mean, it's just like a thought for that I
No,
had
no,
as well.
I no, no, I totally agree, and I see. We had lunch with a team that does build spaces um, um, this past week, and we all got along really well. We had shared good thoughts and some suggestions about where we're headed in all this space. So I think there's a lot of collaboration that's possible, and that people want to help each other most of the time. I mean, majority. I will say one more thing I forgot to mention because I've been working with the VR hardware for so long. Back 15, 16 years ago, a really high-end 6 degree of freedom headset and ecosystem would set you back between about 80 to $100,000. So coming from that perspective and seeing that the headsets are $300 or $500, and then seeing companies go, I can't buy this because it's $1,500, and I'm thinking, man, I was a small business 15 years ago and felt that $80,000 was a reasonable investment
Wow.
for a high-end system. And the today's system that you can go buy at Target for for $300 or $400 is smokes and blows away what you could accomplish 15 years ago. So if you just think about where this is going to go over the course of the next 5, 6 years, 5, 10 years, we can assume that the quality, the performance, the experience is going to just continuously, significantly increase.
Definitely,
Interesting.
and also the
Yeah.
fact
Yeah.
that Michael, since you've been involved with this industry for the longest time, as far as we've met people within this field, I think I wish I could probably walk into your memories and see what you've experienced before.
This
it
is
would
this
be
is
so interesting, yeah.
for us. This space, Michael, Web3 and the metaverse well, we've been gamers all our lives, so we sort of understand the phase of the metaverse is coming into. But it's been a buzzword for the last year, 2 years that people are trying to grasp and understand what it means. Michael, from your point of view, how would you define the metaverse?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that it's kind of important because everyone has their own impression of what the metaverse is. And if you ask 25 people, you'd get 25 different answers. I think the narrow view of the metaverse is, we're not anywhere near it yet. It's something that we may achieve someday, but it's the concept of similar to like, the internet. I mean, the internet is one big place with all these interconnected, destinations. We don't have that yet for the metaverse, and it may be 5 years, maybe 7 years, maybe 12, maybe 15 years before we have this one interconnected world that we can just go from place to place to place. But if you talk to people who have a very wide opinion of the metaverse, they'd say, well, we already have the metaverse. The metaverse is just the internet. The metaverse is any kind of interconnected three-dimensional world. And so we have plenty of that. We have these games like that. And some people will say, like, okay, I want a metaverse and I'm going to have a metaverse. And that's obviously the wrong terminology, right? You can't say this is a metaverse and that's a metaverse because based on the concept of metaverse, it's one thing. You can't have a whole bunch of little ones. But from my company's perspective and my perspective, we look and say, well, if you've read the book Ready Player One, if you've seen the movie Ready Player One, we're aiming for what that movie was essentially showing us visually. Like we're aiming for an experience that feels incredible, that feels almost lifelike, that looks and feels and makes a person feel like you're in another world, right? And I think we're getting closer to that. I don't know if I'd say that's 2 years away or 5 years away or 8 years away, but these, being able to go into a world, see your friends, see people, spend time with them, the experiences can be more and more immersive, visually more and more impressive, and there's fun things to do and interesting people to meet, and it just becomes less of a technical hurdle and less sort of glitchy and more just it works perfectly every time.
Do you think,
And
Michael, that's
we're not
inevitable?
there. We're not there yet, but we're headed there. I think it's inevitable. Yeah, I think it's certainly inevitable. No question.
What do you think?
It's just hard to say if is it 3 years away, or 6 years away, or 8 years away. But I'd say, I think before the end of this decade, the metaverse as a concept is going to be, really pretty solid, and people are going to understand where they fit in it. And we are already seeing jobs across the board of people who are making a living and sort of working and living in the metaverse. And we also hear, and I'm sure you guys have heard it too, like corporations are hiring their chief metaverse officer, their chief metaverse officer. And we're hearing more and more corporations that do that. So clearly, big business is behind this concept. And we know and we talk to people all the time who make their living in the metaverse.
It's insane.
So, yeah,
It's happening. It's
yeah,
happening.
yeah.
It's
Definitely.
awesome.
Also, Michael, I wanted to understand from you. I mean, as for how we are placed, me, Taza and I would be like 25-year-olds, turn, we just got into the metaverse probably like, the metaverse concept would say, probably like a couple of months back, because we were like, I was doing my masters, he was already involved within the space, and then we started having conversations, and now we're doing something like this. What do you think that, like us, now you're seeing the Gen Z coming up, even millennials starting to involve themselves in the conversations, even though they're at a very young stage. But yes, I mean, there's still so much curiosity around these things. What do you think is this generation? You must be seeing us as kids, but what do you think would be this generation for the metaverse as of now? What do you think? What's our lifespan within this space? And of course,
Well,
yours as
first of
well.
all, well, first of all, I mean, I'm 49 years old, but I think of myself as like a 15-year-old, right? So, I mean, that's what I envision if I don't look in the mirror. So, I think technology is exciting to people of all ages. My mother, who's in her mid 80s, she loves the virtual reality glasses and the augmented reality stuff. I do think that what's going to happen in the next few years, the next 4 to 5 years, is we're going to see AR become have a bigger role. It'll be really interesting to see what Apple comes out with. And I think that once we start to see it not be such a, hey, let's put this on and separate from everyone, but it's a mixture of I want to go to a virtual space or I want to have a virtual elements in my space. And there's going to be times when we're going to be bringing the metaverse into our offices and into our homes and into our automobiles and onto our planes and there's going to be times when we want to escape or we want to go off and do a dance party in Ibiza, but we really can't get on a plane and fly to Ibiza, so we're going to jump in with our friends and have a dance party. It's going to be tons of fun. And that's where, a virtual reality metaverse will be really awesome. But there's going to be times when we're going to be, in our offices or whatever, and we're going to need to have a meeting with somebody. And it's easier to put on the AR glasses and see their hologram walk right into your space and have a conversation in your actual physical office or look at some virtual model of, let's say, a hotel, a hospital, a bridge or something like that, and share that experience with 4 or 5 people around the world. And some are in virtual reality and some are in augmented reality. And I think the lines are going to blend together. But for a younger generation, for people who are in their 20s right now, I mean, I think this is just like the evolution that my generation saw with phones, right? If you go back to when I was in college, nobody had a cell phone. It was absolutely nobody. And when we got as professionals, the phones were pretty kind of wimpy. And then maybe like a few years out, all of a sudden there's the iPhone, and the smartphone becomes something that everyone has. And as everyone gets it, they start to revolve their lives around a little bit more. And my guess is over the next, 10 years, people in your generation and some people in my generation will see these tools and start to revolve their lives around it, or at least their lives will be more entangled with the different devices that will make their lives more hopefully better, and bring more convenience, utility, value to their daily lives. And I know that for me, I was able to last year with my brother climb a mountain that my company and I created for another corporation, and to go on a mountain climbing experience with my brother who's in Miami while I'm in Dallas, and we're doing it together. And we get to the top and we can, put our arms around each other and look out down over the valley we just crossed. And to think that happened with two people in separate destinations is like, well, just imagine in a few more years when the technology gets better and better and the graphics and the quality get better and better. Yeah.
It's too
It's
much
kind of an
Uh,
exciting
utility.
time to be alive.
It's yeah,
Definitely, it is.
it's incredible the level of utility the metaverse offers, and I do sincerely believe that we will be connected in one shape or form in the metaverse in the future. We'll always be connected, and that's the key thing I take away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Awesome.
Michael,
I do.
moving on to our next, point that we're trying to understand right now. Of course, we're seeing so much progression in the metaverse. You've seen it over the years. We're having so many conversations, and there are advancements. What do you think are the current challenges that we, see within the metaverse landscape? What would could be the pitfalls within this space, and how do you think these challenges can be addressed? I think it's one of the big challenges that we know that there are gaps, but the way they're addressed and the way we want to bring them up, it's kind of in a very, for us as users, that we feel a little bit confused, but of course would love to know from your side.
Well, one challenge that we have right now is battery life, and I'm going to tell you that after this question, I'm gonna go back in and plug my headset in, but because I can see I don't have quite enough battery, so there's an issue, right? We could always use better battery life. We'll have, I believe as the years go by, lighter weight, more powerful headsets that will do more, and this is going to be, an slow advancement technology. And I've been watching this out for 26 years, and the headsets are much more powerful, much lighter. They can do much more. They can do the inside out tracking. It's really been interesting to watch this happen. But we have to get to the point where the equipment is, it's reasonably, I don't say reasonably affordable. Right now in the world today, you have about 170 million people that have used a virtual reality device, but you have about 6 billion people who have a smartphone. So at some point, and this is years and years away, at some point the smartphone will be replaced by a smart device. And the smart device might be a pair of glasses that you can put on, and maybe it's mostly AR, and then occasionally it switches to VR. But in time, that's going to happen. And the advancements, the challenges we face right now is that, the smaller you make stuff, the more powerful you make stuff, you produce heat. And you need a lot of power to run that. So they've got to work these things out, and this will take time for the scientists and the engineers to get these devices to be more powerful, but at the same time produce less heat. So there's clearly, years and years and years of advancement that has to happen. And then from the software side, we have some pretty advanced programs right now. We're in an experience right now that's pretty incredible. But I do think that we'll see really amazing artificial intelligence, and we're working with a company that I'm really impressed with, In World AR and In World, and they have a great VR avatar solution. So I'm bringing their avatars into some of my spaces, and it's incredible to have a conversation like this with an artificial intelligent avatar, and one that's very, very sharp that you can have a engaged conversation with. I think we'll see advancements in, you know, the ability to scale the environment for lots more users. Right now, it's hard to have a virtual reality environment in VR to have more than about 50 people. So in time, we're going to get to that point where, I don't know, if a few more years down the road, we would expect to be able to walk out and look around and see, hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people on the beach, and walk down and talk to people and see things. So I do expect that as time goes by, we'll solve some of those more technical challenges with networking and of course the internet speed will always play a role. Fortunately, we're at a time when we're seeing faster and faster internet speeds, but still there's going to have to be advancements on the infrastructure side, on the hardware side, on the software side, and then truthfully on the ethics and the government as well. Like the sort of the how do we make sure these experiences are safe, and we're thinking about those who might be hurt or frauded or just not feeling comfortable or good in these environments. So we've got a lot of different areas of the metaverse that have to be worked out. Fortunately, it's not going to happen overnight. So as time goes by, we should be working on all these different areas kind of simultaneously.
Definitely. And also, I think, Michael, as you mentioned, an AI avatar. Taza and I were actually we built our own podcast room on Spatial. And we had an
Uh-huh.
NPC from Sketchfab that we placed in one of the sections. And I think someone stepped in, a person who knew both of us, and he's like, "Oh my god, I just saw another person who's sitting out there, and that person does not have a name tag or anything. What is that guy?" And he had no idea that it was an NPC. I was thinking, what if you could have NPCs within spaces who could really take care of situations when you're really not there, because
Yeah,
someone
no,
would be
that's
stepping
that's
in.
what businesses want.
Mm.
If you think
Yeah,
about it, we're working with several retail brands right now that are building out their virtual reality, their metaverse stores for the future. I'd love to tell you, but some really big brands. And the idea here is that if you can make a really intelligent, helpful artificial intelligent agent, then customers can come in and have a one-on-one experience. So instead you're walking through a store waiting for some service rep to help you. But what if you walked into a virtual store and you had an expert on the product and the services being able to really help you? And then what if that could be scaled to a massive degree? And so you could simultaneously help, let's say, 10,000 customers at the exact same time without having to have 10,000 staff members to be positioned all over the world to fill that role. So I mean, I do think that we're going to see some really exciting improvements in the mixture of artificial intelligence and the metaverse in the near future. Now, after I say that, I have to say my battery's about dead. Let me go grab a cable and see if I can save this. So just one, give me, if you wouldn't mind, just give
Yeah,
me one
sure.
second, okay?
yeah, that's
Okay.
perfectly fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Wicked. There's a lot of fireworks in the background. If you on my side,
Did oh okay.
yeah.
I thought there were fireworks on the beach. I was like, "Is someone getting married?"
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm back.
Perfect.
Wicked.
Now let's see. I can't say for sure we're going to be able to survive because it's at 2%. But I do have another headset, so if I have to, I can switch out and get on another headset if that's what I've got to do.
Michael,
We'll
I have a question around
yeah.
mainstream adoption.
Mhm.
The cost of VR is very expensive for people in different third world countries, let's say, for example.
Mhm.
I guess my question is, what sort of major milestones do we have to hit to get to a point where the metaverse is accessible to people across the world?
Yeah, I mean, I do think you have to get to a point where the price point is down. But we were doing a project in Africa, and we reached we were going to build this metaverse experience that was mostly going to be accessible by the mobile phone. And so some folks are not going to be initially having to jump into the metaverse on a VR device. But in platforms like Spatial, you have a way to get into the metaverse and interact with people on a mobile device. And I think that the mobile devices and the web are sort of the way that you get larger adoption now. And then as time goes by, they have interactions with people who are, maybe in a virtual reality headset. And then as time goes by, they go, okay, it's so much better in virtual reality. And you start to see people, maybe save up for it or share a device or something like that. At $300 a headset, that's what Oculus Quest 2 was for over a year. It was a pretty reasonable price. And a lot of people around the world have a mobile phone. I don't know that we're going to get to the point where everyone on the planet's going to have VR. Right now, there's what 80%. I think it's something like 80 something percent of the world's population owns a mobile phone. So we're probably never going to get to a point where 100% adopts. But I do think that, especially if the AR or VR device can double as a communication set, so it also doubles as a phone. And then you'd say, well, instead of buying a phone, I'm going to buy a mobile device. I know that I'm having more and more conversations these days on WhatsApp, and WhatsApp for all my clients and customers and friends around the world. Well, it's just a Wi-Fi connection. I'm not paying. I'm not paying for that phone call. So you could imagine a time in the future where conversations like the one we're having right now may be just as sufficient to do this with an internet connection, and a virtual reality device. So I think we'll get there, but it might be, again, still years off. I do think that we'll probably see, if you remember the movie Ready Player Ready Player One, where there's different sort of levels of like equipment. You've got the really the high end, the high end experience stuff, where the suit has just perfect, touch controls and haptic devices and everything. The optics are incredible, and then you may have those devices that are less of that, and that may be the way it's going to be. And so when I say, hey, I love this $1,500 Oculus or Meta Quest Pro or Meta Pro, I realize that not everyone's going to go out and buy that device. Because I've come from a long line of expensive, VR headsets, it actually seems like a bargain, considering that, a HoloLens 2 is $3,500. But, I've still bought a lot of, I think I've purchased somewhere in the neck of the woods of about 30 pairs of Quest 2s. So, I think people will have to make those decisions. The other thing I will tell you is I've been talking with more and more enterprise corporations that have told me that they either recently purchased 1,000 or 20,000 VR headsets. So clearly, the workers of the world are going to be being, in some cases, supplied with this equipment as part of their job. So just like you'd get a laptop or a company phone or a company iPad, I could see in the future you're also provided a company AR VR device.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. I try and see the use case right now with corporations buying a package of VR headsets given the price cost. Do you see the utility at this point in time for corporations to invest in, let's say, 20, 30 VR headsets if they're only going to use it perhaps 2 or 3 times, best case scenario, a week?
I've talked with a lot of companies, and I would say this year, well, let me just tell you this much. Like 2 years ago, we would get a request to build a virtual environment, I would say about once every 2 weeks. And then last year in 2021, we would get a request to build a virtual reality space about 4 or 5 times a week. But this year, we get a request for a virtual environment anywhere from 5 to 20 times a day, right, from companies around the world. And it's incredible. And we can't help everybody. A lot of times companies have very small budgets, or their ideas or their use cases are not achievable. But I will say a lot of businesses are taking it very seriously, and they are recognizing that it's not necessarily about how we're going to use it today, right now, to make money, but it's about recognizing that this is the future and educating themselves and becoming more, using it more and more frequently, and figuring out where the use cases are, or testing out theories and R&D. But some companies will take a very large scale approach and say, hey, listen, our advertising budget this year is, 50 million, $100 million. To spend $1 million to have VR headsets for, I don't know however many that would be, for a couple thousand of our employees. That's not that crazy of a concept for us to, become more aware of how we're going to use this in the future. So it really just depends on sort of the leadership and the thought processes behind the management and the teams at the corporate level to decide how big of an investment we want to make in this space. But I mean, I recently had a conversation with a company who said they were buying 20,000
Oh my
VR
word.
headsets. So yeah.
I have a question. Are you seeing small and medium enterprises also
Yeah.
bring VR into their business model or their business
Yeah. I mean,
values?
Yeah, so some of it's R&D, right? Some of it is R&D, and we're thinking about how we're going to use this. Some of it is they look for current ways in which it can help save their company money. So it's not always about making money, and sometimes it's about saving money. Part of it could be communication, less travel. Part of it could come from the vantage point of like product design or package design. How can we save money in those areas? There's also some people who are looking at it and saying, listen, we want to attract this next generation of employees. We want to be more on the front edge of this technology instead of being looked at as we're behind. So a number of companies have come to us and said we're looking to build these experiences, if anything, for attraction of talent, right? To get forward thinking company people to come work for our company. And then there's the training side of it, which, depending on how you look at it, there's been a lot of studies that have shown that if you train your employees with this technology, they retain the information better, they can train faster, and that there's a significant value in savings of sort of employee retention and better performance from better trained employees using virtual reality. So I think that there's that side of it, and then there are these other companies that are looking at it and saying, listen, this is the future, and if we can start to figure out how we're going to make money by selling our products or selling our services in the future using this technology, it's worth it for us to invest in that now instead of waiting 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and everyone else is doing it, and then we got to play catch up. So I definitely think, I mean, it's been an interesting year, but if I took my average on the year and I said, let's say it was, I don't know, 7 people, 7 companies a year, 7 companies a day, 5 days a week. What is that? 35. It's 120. So we've seen this year almost 1,000 companies, maybe 800 to 1,000 companies approach us this year about creating and doing something in the metaverse.
Wicked. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. Um, I just want to bring you back to the point you said around education in VR. Why do you think it's a memorable platform to educate employees on? Um, just from your point of view, what's the why do people retain information better using these platforms in comparison
Well, a
to
couple.
Teams or something
Yeah, a
else?
couple reasons. First of all, when you can visualize something three-dimensionally, your brain keeps a spatial map in its head, right? You have a memory of something in a spatial environment that you don't have when you're watching a two-dimensional video. Two-dimensional videos are fine, but there's more information that the brain is processing, and so it's basically saving that information better. But in addition to it, you can be here with. Let's say forget just for a second that we're both watching a video on YouTube or on Zoom or something like that, and you're someplace else watching the video, and I'm watching the video. You and I are watching the video together, but let's say we're going to repair, I don't know, a small engine or something like that. You're just assuming that I can understand it and that I can see what's going on because I'm watching the same thing you are. But if we have a three-dimensional model here in front of us of that engine, and we can turn it around, and you can see that I'm unscrewing the bolts correctly and setting them down and plugging this thing in correctly or not, you can tell immediately that I understand what's going on and give me feedback whether I'm doing it right or wrong. You can't do that on a Zoom call. You can't do that in a
Agreed.
video. The only way that you can get something similar is for me to fly into your destination or you to fly to my destination, and then we do that in the same room. So the virtual reality experience gives you that same room feel without it having to actually travel, move our bodies across great distances. So that's just
Wicked.
one of 1,000 different ways. I mean, one of the things I'll tell you, a lot of my companies are reaching out to me or asking us to build is to build their corporate campuses so that when employees show up, they're familiar with where the HR department is. They're familiar with where they go to get their lunch. They're familiar with where their offices are located or where they need to park. So there's this whole thing about
I
education
that
of staff.
that makes me. Is this a digital twin of the physical office?
Yes, digital
Wow.
camp, digital twins of their campuses, office campuses. Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And colleges are looking at doing the same thing. I mean, I teach a class at UCLA on virtual reality world building, and colleges are looking to build campuses and virtual lecture halls so that students can really experience a class and the three-dimensional information in the same experience. So when I teach my class, I do about 80-90% of it on Zoom, but then we jump into virtual reality worlds and we go on tours together as a group. We go and visit various places, and we study it, and we talk about it, and we look at it. And the students have told me they really, really respond positively. They really enjoy that three-dimensional virtual reality part of the class.
What platforms are what platforms are you currently working with to provide these experiences?
Well, we build on most of our spaces on Spatial, but we also work with
Okay.
Vadim and we work with AltSpace. And I mentioned we've done a couple projects on Decentraland and Sandbox, Glue and Arthur, Engage, Agora. We have a lot of different platforms that we've built a few spaces on, but Spatial as a corporation is one that we've been working closely with for the last almost 3 years. And so we give them a lot of feedback, and then in return, they've seen that we're very good at this. And so when corporations go to Spatial to build something, a lot of times Spatial will say, well, we've got a handful of companies who can help you create your environments. But Spatial says, but this company has been doing it longer than anybody else on our platform. And they've built experiences for this brand and this brand and this brand and this brand and this brand. I mean, we worked for the Olympics. We worked for, I said McDonald's. We've worked for some very large corporations. In fact, Saudi Aramco was one of our clients, so the largest, corporation by revenue in the world. And so we have all this experience. And then I think a lot of times companies appreciate working with a team that's built a lot of these type of environments.
Wow, incredible,
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
Incredible. Adi, any sharing points?
I mean, the associations and opportunities are massive, and even Michael, you say that. It's just, I'm so curious to understand what could possibly be, you know, if we are talking about these level of associations right now in terms of education, in terms of association with brands, what are we really looking at in the future? I think it's a big question. It's I think you've answered it very accurately in
Mm.
terms of what has been the present. So I think we had this title for our previous session, which was called a brief history of the Web3 future, and that's really close to what we've discussed today as well. Because Michael, your experience, and of course what you're doing right now is a big foundation and a big answer to what we could be experiencing in the future.
Incredible.
And it's something that I think Taza and I can definitely resonate. A lot of people, of course, you're involved with, will be doing as well. So I mean, yeah, it's been incredible in terms of how we are seeing how we are understanding this space and how it gets validated with the right perspective.
Incredible, yeah. It's
Yeah.
incredible to hear the metaverse is not happening in the future, it's happening now. That's the key point.
Yeah, we're at the early stages of it all, right? I mean, I'd say, we're just at the crawling stages of what the metaverse is. It's hard to sort of get your head around how big it's going to be because we only have maybe I don't know, 10, 20 million people who are in the metaverse on a regular basis. But if you look at when that starts to flow into being billions of people in the metaverse, it's going to be mind-boggling, the experiences.
Definitely,
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I'm I'm really excited to see how the space evolves and we're all there at the forefront. It travels at 100 miles per hour every week.
Yeah,
So
it
many
does.
different it's hard to catch up, keep up to date sometimes. But yeah,
It
Definitely.
really is. Yeah.
Michael, it's
Uh,
been great having you.
Yeah,
Thank
Michael, it's super
My pleasure.
insightful. Yeah, I mean, we connected so in such an amazing fashion. It's one thing that I think Taza and I have been experiencing in terms of how we're exploring different platforms on Oculus and on off the VR side as well. But it's really good to see that whatever we're experiencing right now develops into conversations like these, and then it becomes insight for so many more people who are just like us,
mm.
curious individuals who
Pe-
want to step into the
people
metaverse.
are people are thirsty for knowledge about the space, and I think that's where we try and bring a platform to people, bring thought leaders like yourself to sort of share their experiences. And I definitely, for me, it's a learning experience, this a first-hand learning experience, and I learn a lot through these sessions, honestly, more than any news article I read. So thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you
My
so much,
pleasure.
Michael.
Before I go, I would like to just say that, we reached a point this summer where we had just had so many companies approach us about acquiring us or investing, and we found a really good partner, this company called Exclusible that in Portugal, and they acquired our business about 3 weeks ago, and they have some really amazing sort of like support products that go along with what we do. And in fact, they've got a great CRM solution for the metaverse, and we're building with them in collaboration a lot of these new products and services. But it's an exciting time. But we found that we were really focused on the building, and we really don't have experience in the marketing, the social media, the sort of promotional side of things, and we really needed to partner with a company who had that. So yeah, we just recently did that, and it feels great to know that we've got a strong, intelligent partner who's working on other side of this besides just the building of spaces, and these guys are very sharp. So I mean, if you want to talk to someone else next, I'd say reach out to Thibaut at Exclusible and listen to what he's doing,
For
because
sure.
he's building some incredible stuff.
No, absolutely. Just send his details across. And we'll give him a shout.
Yeah,
We'll
and I
do.
think
Organize
it's
something.
also important from how I see it as well, because I just came out of uni. I did my masters in digital marketing, but all my projects were in Web3. So ever since I've come out, I've been like, dude, I just need to be a part of this community to understand how things are before I step in and do something on my own self in metaverse marketing. But yes, thank you so much, Michael. Definitely we'll stay in
Of
touch, and
course.
we will reach out to Tivo, and I'll also connect with you, off platform
All
as
right.
well, to understand what's been going on within this field, so that as a newcomer, I get to get the right information and the right insight. But yeah, of course,
That's
Of
Michael,
it.
course.
thank you so much for the session itself. It's
Michael,
been
cheers.
extremely,
You're welcome,
incredibly
guys.
insightful.
Uh,
Yeah.
Incredibly.
Have a
Thank you.
wonderful rest of your day. You
Cheers.
bet.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Bye
Cheers.
bye. Bye bye.